Hey everybody, it's Chris Sims from ComicsAlliance.com, and this is Here's the Thing. No special guest this week, just me. And today, we are going to talk about comic book dialogue. Now, comic book dialogue is weird, and it always has been. I don't really know why, but if I had to guess, I'd say that a lot of it comes from the way that comics developed in the very early years, starting in the late 30s and 40s and 50s. Now, with the Comics Code and everything that came around in the 50s, comics were really made for children. That was the public perception, and that was what sold, so that's what people made. The problem is, comics also had really complicated continuity right from the start. The stories built on each other. And even though that was happening, they were still made to stand alone as periodicals, so every issue could be somebody's first. So, when you're dealing with something that was directed towards kids and also had really complicated continuity, you had to do a lot of explaining. And that led to a very particular dialogue style in the early days. And it goes through the 50s and 60s, where you have this really unnatural, stilted, Silver Agey dialogue. You've got all those covers where Superman is watching somebody falling out of an airplane, and he's like, "Oh no, she's falling out of an airplane. I can't save her. I don't have time. It's only a split second." And it's like, dude, you're Superman. You're faster than a speeding bullet. If you have time to deliver a monologue, you have time to save someone who is falling out of an airplane. Then you go further into the 70s and 80s and 90s, and it flips around in a different way. You've got Frank Miller dialogue, which no one has ever spoken like in their life, and that kind of becomes the dominant form of tough guy dialogue from the 80s to today. Then it swings back to now, and you have this attempt to make really naturalistic dialogue and conversations, which are really just people repeating themselves. Repeating themselves? Yeah, repeating themselves. A lot on the page. On the page? In the balloons. Balloons? Yeah, that's what you call those things with words in them. Balloons. You get the picture. So, comic books are no stranger to awkward dialogue. And I thought it would be fun to take some of this dialogue that was never meant to be spoken out loud and read it out loud for you guys in this episode of Here's the Thing. Now, I picked out a couple myself, and I also got some people on the internet to suggest a few. I asked on Twitter, going to me at the ISB, and using the hashtag HTT for Here's the Thing, so that's pretty easy. And I got a lot of really good suggestions. So I picked out some favorites of mine, I've got some favorites of yours, and I thought it would be fun. Now, the one I wanted to start with is a particular favorite of mine, and it is from one of my favorite comics. It's James Robinson and Tony Harris's Starman #3. Now, Robinson has very particular dialogue. If you read it out loud, if you sound it out in your head, it's really strange. It's kind of stilted, it's kind of awkwardly emphasized, depending on where the boldface words fall, but it really works in a lot of ways. I love Starman, but I think it's clear that this dialogue was never meant to be spoken out loud. And if you saw that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie that James Robinson made, you know that's the case. Boom! Nailed it! Another friend of mine has a favorite one from Earth 2 #1, where someone goes, "Look, what is it? More horror from the stars?" A phrase that no one would ever speak. But this one is my all-time favorite bit of comics awkward dialogue. This happens when Jack Knight is fighting the son of the Mist, and the Mist says something along the lines of, "I bet you think you're cool." And Jack Knight says, "Cool? You're kidding. I know I'm a geek more in love with yesterday than tomorrow. Cool? No way. Of course. Compared to you, I'm Chris Isaac." Starman #3. It's a good one. My other favorite one, the one that I always quote, the piece of dialogue that made me hate Cyclops forever. This comes from X-Men #1 by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. And the premise of that opening sequence is that the X-Men are having a training exercise where they are trying to assault the mansion. And the winner is whoever can get to Professor Xavier and kill him in this scenario. So Wolverine gets there, and he pops his claws and goes, "Bang, Charlie, you're dead," which is pretty cool. But here is Cyclops' response in total, and you will notice it's a Chris Claremont one-panel dialogue that took up an entire index card. "Back off, Wolverine. You made your point. Are you nuts or what? You know how dangerous those adamantium claws of yours are. A wave of your arm could slice through solid steel. One slip just now." And that's where it ends. That's like 5 word balloons. It happens in one panel. I thought about reading Magneto's speech from the end, and we'll put up a picture of it here, that's just word balloons in a halo around Magneto. It's so many words. It's amazing. Now, this was one that I got a lot of requests for. Specifically from my Friends Ferdinand 2. This is from Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's The Ultimates #4. You remember The Ultimates, right? The really realistic take on the Avengers, where the Avengers felt really real and modern, and so obviously they talked like real people would talk. Here's a conversation they have in the 4th issue, where they are discussing who should play the Ultimates in a movie. And this is Nick Fury's dialogue. And I'll tell you the one guy alive who could do a convincing Tony Stark. From hell's Johnny Depp. Don't underestimate Depp, Miss Penn. A lot of people tag him with that pretty boy label, but he's actually one of the most accomplished actors in Hollywood at the moment. From hell's Johnny Depp. No one, even the people who were promoting From Hell when it came out, referred to Johnny Depp as From hell's Johnny Depp. Admittedly, this was before Pirates of the Caribbean, but Edward Scissorhands, Ed Wood. Ed Wood's a good one. You could have gone with that one. No, From Hell. The Alan Moore adaptation. So that's that. This is a good one. This is another one from Starman. And I promise I'm not picking on James Robinson here. It's just his dialogue is great. And this one made me laugh out loud when it was suggested. This is from Jay McGee on Twitter. JMCGHIE. This is spoken by the original Starman, Ted Knight, who says, "I bet you thought killing an old man would be a piece of cake. Well, I've got news for you. The cake's stale." It's pretty great. Pretty great. This one came from Green Luther, from Fantastic Four 390, and the setup for this is that Black Panther is appearing on a 5-foot-tall video screen. Now, for those of you who don't know, Black Panther meets the Fantastic Four very early in, I think it's Fantastic Four 54, 55, somewhere around there, right after the Galactus trilogy. So they know who he is. They have known him for several years at this point. This is 340 issues later. This is what Black Panther says on the screen. "Greetings, Johnny. 'Tis I, T'Challa, ruler of Wakanda, allied to the Fantastic Four, and Black Panther." It's a pretty good one. This is another one that I wrote down just for me. It's from Punisher 2099, which was written by Pat Mills and Tony Skinner. And this is an example of awkward comic book dialogue being amazing. It's one of my favorite things that has ever been said in a comic. The Punisher, Jake Gallows, who is a cop whose family is murdered in the far-off future year of 2099, hence the title, he is fueled by his anger, and he's chasing down a crook who's on some kind of hover vehicle, and the guy jumps out with a jetpack to get away. Punisher jumps out after him, wearing just his costume, and says, out loud, to no one around, "I don't need a jetpack. All I need is hate." This one was suggested by @GrimDominatrix on Twitter. And this is a 3-panel sequence from Batman 533, and the sequence is Batman, Robin, and Nightwing all tearing off their shirts to reveal that they're wearing their costumes underneath. And it's Nightwing speaks first, then Robin, then Batman. Nightwing: "Then let's blow it." Robin: "Yeah, well, I'm still a go, not a goner." Batman: "Strap on the chutes and bail." Now, I love these comics. I love most of the comics we've talked about. And just to prove that we're not picking on anyone, I wanted to read something from one of my favorite creators, the best creator in comic book history, Jack Kirby, man who co-created the Marvel Universe, created the Fourth World, created Devil Dinosaur, created OMAC, the Demon, Commandy, all that great stuff. Unquestionably one of the greatest creators in comics, but also one of the best writers of strange dialogue. Now, Kirby's dialogue has been referred to as word jazz before, and I think it's a good name for it. I got that from Matt Fraction. I'm not sure where he picked it up. That might be a Fraction original. But Kirby's dialogue is very operatic, and it really works well when it's being spoken by gods, which is often the case, especially in a book like New Gods. People are very grand with their pronouncements. They're very sweeping. And when it's Darkseid talking, when it's Orion talking, they're talking about prophecies and gods and good and evil and the nature of man. Even when it's Devil Dinosaur and people are, talking about this towering monster and these things that they don't understand because they're cave people, it works. When it's normal people, it doesn't really work so well. So this comes from at Dan_Toland on Twitter, who recommended I read this segment. Now, the premise of the New Gods book was that Orion had allied himself with some normal people that formed the Orion Gang, and or possibly Orion's mob, I think. And every time they show up, they introduce themselves with their full names. So here is a entire page of New Gods dialogue by Jack Kirby. Later, in the apartment of Dave Lincoln, a meeting is held. I tell you I saw it with my own eyes. We're in a war. It's hidden, but very real. But why us? We're just ordinary people. Oh yeah? How many plain folks have been abducted to a weird world like Apocalypse? Orion got us back here. We owe him that. We owe him that, Mr. Lanza. Such as we are, we may have to tackle super beings. But I'm Victor Lanza, an insurance executive, a family man. My wife makes me carry an umbrella in case it rains. This, now, New Genesis, Apocalypse, and things that would scare John Wayne. What about it, Lincoln? I'm Claudia Shane, simple but worried secretary. What am I involved in this time? And me, young but cool Harvey Lockman. Young but cool Harvey Lockman. That is how I'm going to introduce myself to everyone from now on. Next time you watch Here's the Thing, I'll be telling you, hi everybody, it's me, young but cool Chris Sims. But that is something we will do next week. Thank you all for tuning in, and if you've got favorite awkward comics dialogue, if you've got something that doesn't sound quite right in your favorite comic, send it in. You can find me on Twitter, at the ISB. Obviously, you can find me each and every day right here at comicsalliance.com, and you can find me every week in this series of videos, Here's the Thing. That's all for this week. Next week, we'll be back with another one. Have a great week, everybody.